I think it'd be a fair call for me to say that the expressions regressive, left, and jumping the shark are two expressions that are somewhat overused on YouTube, probably used more for hyperbole purposes than the purposes of accuracy. What I'm going to be talking about here today is something where I think I could legitimately combine both those expressions in one sentence, and quite reasonably make the claim that I was using it for purposes of accuracy rather than purposes of hyperbole. And what I'm going to be talking about is something that doesn't seem to have been covered very much on YouTube, although it has been on other elements of social media, and that is this business of the Southern Poverty Law Centre, the SPLC for short, and their list, which they released on the 26th of October last month, of 15 people they regard as anti-Muslim extremists. Just a little bit of history, because when I first heard about the SPLC, I was somewhat naive to what they were all about, and I was told that this group that somebody was wanting to tell me about had been labelled by the SPLC as a hate group, and that was obviously expected to be something meaningful to me, and to my shame I suppose that it wasn't. So I looked the group up and realised that the group was quite a big mover and shaker and did some very, very good work during the heyday of the American civil rights movement. But then perhaps there have been some suggestions of a little bit of mission creep, and perhaps a little bit of overt ideology creeping in where perhaps it shouldn't in the meantime, and that perhaps they're more... Their business, their stock in trade now seems to be labelling groups hate groups, and perhaps they've gone a little bit past their remit. But that's just a suggestion until this last week, until the 26th of October. And this list of 15 individuals then that they've labelled as Muslim, anti-Muslim extremists. There are several names that you would find familiar on the list, including Ayaan Hirsi Ali. The one that I really want to talk about is a British guy called Maajid Nawaz. Now, if you don't know anything about Maajid Nawaz, this guy is a Muslim himself. In fact, he's not just a Muslim, but from time to time, he has been quite an ardent and robust defender of Islam. He's also a guy that was a co-founder of the Quilliam Foundation. If you're not familiar with the Quilliam Foundation, they are, in actual fact, one of the things, the Quilliam Foundation, they have some links to something that I talked about quite recently, which was the right to debate movement in the United Kingdom at universities. And one of the thrusts of that and the linkage between that is that they recognised that simply suppressing extreme Muslim positions just buries them underground, and that quite reasonably they think that a much better way to tackle that on places like university campuses is to allow those extreme positions to be heard, but in such a way that a light is shined on them by holding those extreme positions up to a debate format so that people can counter that kind of extremism. A lot of the work of the Quilliam Foundation then is involved in dealing with Muslim extremism within the United Kingdom and beyond, and part of that involves tackling extremists directly, but it also involves tackling Western governments and trying to encourage Western governments to take a more nuanced understanding of Islam and the Muslim world and to moderate some of their policies. It doesn't sound really like the position of an anti-Muslim extremist, does it? But that is how they've described Maajid Nawaz. Now, what I want to do in this video, because what they've done on the document they released for each of these 15 individuals is that they've wrote a little bit about each individual, and then they've done a little bit called in his own words or in her own words for each one, where effectively what they've allowed is for each of these individuals to hoist themselves by their own petard, to allow their own words and deeds to demonstrate why they have been categorized as an anti-Muslim extremist. So what I want to do is to show you 3 of the 4 things that they've listed as the reasoning behind why they have regarded Maajid Nawaz as an anti-Muslim extremist. You're going to love listening to these 3 things. So this is the first one. In a November 16th, 2013 op-ed in the Daily Mail, Nawaz called for criminalising the wearing of the veil or niqab in many public places. I want to read you what he said. Let me read you some tracts from that article in the Daily Mail, which was written by Maajid Nawaz. This is what he wrote. In July 2007, the leader of the Red Mosque siege in the Pakistani capital Islamabad, Abdul Aziz Ghazi, attempted to escape dressed in a burqa. Luckily, Pakistan's security forces, who are overwhelmingly Muslim, displayed no cultural sensitivity when demanding he remove his face veil for identification purposes. During the same year, Yassim Omar, a member of the 217 terrorist cell that attempted to bomb London's transport system, fled our capital dressed in a burqa before being arrested in Birmingham a few days later. In 2006, murder suspect Mustafa Jama slipped out of the UK via Heathrow dressed in a burqa. So was it really any surprise that last month terror suspect Mohammed Ahmed Mohammed, that's a really Muslimy name that is, isn't it? Maybe could have included a couple more Mohammeds in that name, absconded after emerging from a mosque in West London disguised in a burqa. Any item of clothing that covers the face and makes it impossible to identify individuals is open to abuse. Like many, I look with increasing aspiration on the niqab, which covers the face, and the burqa, the garment that covers the entire body. That said, I do not believe in a blanket ban on the niqab. But the quid pro quo is that when everyone else in society is expected to identify themselves, a Muslim woman wearing a niqab should not be exempted. Let me make this clear. It is our duty to adopt a policy barring the wearing of niqabs in these public buildings. Here's my test. Wear a balaclava, motorcycle helmet or face mask would be deemed inappropriate, so should a niqab. It's simple, really. So that was Maajid Nawaz's piece for the Daily Mail. I have to say, I cannot find anything that smacks of anti-Muslim extremism there. I cannot find anything that I would disagree with. He adopts the same position as I do. If you want to go around wearing a burqa or niqab, crack on with it. If you want to go around wearing a deep-sea fucking diving suit, crack on with it. It's you that's going to suffer in wearing it, not me. But what he's saying is when you are in these environments, when to wear them means that it's putting the rest of us in jeopardy, such as in a bank, such as going through an airport. Why should you be exempted just because of your religion when none of the rest of us would be exempted? Now, some people will disagree with that, but to suggest that that is anti-Muslim extremism is one of the most bizarre things that I've ever heard. But the next one is even better. Let me read you the next one. According to a January the 24th, 2014 report in The Guardian, Nawaz tweeted out a cartoon of Jesus and Muhammad, despite the fact that many Muslims see it as blasphemous to draw Muhammad. So now apparently, fuck Charlie Hebdo and every single individual who tweeted out Je suis Charlie, right? Fuck the Danish cartoonist working for Jyllands Posten or whatever it's called, right? Fuck all these individuals. SPLC has made their stance perfectly clear. Now, if you tweet a cartoon or if you publish a cartoon in any shape or form of Muhammad, what you have done is amounted to anti-Muslim extremism. And this is from an organisation that we're expected to take seriously when it comes to labelling hate groups. Now, in some ways, when you read something like that, you might think that's the one you wanted to read out third, Jim, because whatever you're going to come up with out of that can't be any worse than that. But the third one is so nonsensical, it doesn't even relate to Islam at all. It's as if the third one, as if the guy that was writing this list, was writing the list, had to put four things down, right, and his wife was stood behind him saying, make sure you put this next one down because it shows what a sexist Maajid Nawaz is. This is the last one. Nawaz, who had described himself as a feminist, was filmed repeatedly trying to touch a naked lap dancer, according to an April 10th, 2015 report in the Daily Mail. So I've got to say, what the fuck has this got? So I've been to strip shows before, right? And the strip shows that I've been to, I've touched, this is not since I've been married, by the way, but I've touched some of the strippers there. I don't see, does that mean that I'm an anti-Muslim extremist now? How does going and watching a stripper or touching a stripper at a strip show in any way relate to anti-Muslim extremism here? It almost smacks as if this is just, let's throw as much shit as we can at this guy in the hope that some of it sticks. I don't know whether that's what's going on here, or what they're really trying to do is to smear him as being a bad Muslim. You know, this is the kind of thing that Muslims do to other Muslims, is it not? To say, look, you're not a proper Muslim, you're not a good Muslim, you're a bad Muslim. Here, what the hell is this doing on this list? It beggars belief, this. So, how this fits in with me is that effectively it was about, I don't know whether it was a couple of years ago now, a fellow YouTuber got in touch with me on Facebook. I won't give you his name in case I get the odd little detail slightly wrong, but he got in touch with me and he said to me, do you realise that a video that you've made has been posted on the A Voice for Men site, and the SPLC have listed A Voice for Men as a hate group? Now, that was supposed to mean something to me when that was said to me. And the video that I'd made, if you're interested, was about Rebecca Watson. And what had happened was she was commenting on the fact that Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, this guy had been pissing him off for some time, some considerable period of time. And in the end, Buzz Aldrin had smashed him in the face. He'd resorted to physical violence, and Rebecca Watson had gone, yeah, Buzz, well done. I totally back you for doing that. And the point that I'd made is, would Rebecca Watson be saying that if it had been a woman that had been punched? And the ramifications with that is when we get onto discussions of domestic violence, that often there's extreme provocation. People in relationships provoke each other with their words, often for very long periods of time. And if we're saying that justifies punching somebody in the face, I think we're on slightly shaky grounds. But she seemed to be okay with this, pretty much because it was a man that was getting punched in the face, and then I regarded what she was saying on those grounds as probably somewhat sexist. And because what I said had fitted in with A Voice for Men, they'd put a link to my video. Now, I had absolutely no knowledge of that whatsoever at the time, and that's what I said to this YouTuber. But he said, well, aren't you still concerned that this group has your work on their site when the SPLC has them listed as a hate group? Well, I'm now in a position where I can give an answer to that, and I can say, no, I have absolutely no fucking concern whatsoever with any group that the SPLC has ever listed as a hate group, because as far as I'm concerned, what they've got to say now counts for shit. Right, because if they can regard Maajid Nawaz as an anti-Muslim extremist, and this is the best that they can go on, that he's drawn a picture of Muhammad, that he's gone to see a stripper and touched her, and that he thinks that probably wearing veils and niqabs in places like airports and banks isn't a very good idea. Well, I'm sorry, that they've just lost it for me, and they've probably lost it for me forevermore. Okay, that's all I've got to say on this. Interested to know what you've got to think. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.